Hello, my name is Brendan Austin. I am the Director of Financial Performance Management Practice at LPA Software Solutions. Today we're doing a webinar on what we learned at Analytics University, specifically around the planning analytics area. A little bit about LPA before we get started. We were founded in 2001. We are headquartered in Rochester, New York, but we have consultants throughout the United States. We have about 400 clients, spanning from the Fortune 100 all the way down to mid-market. About 80% of our client base does do follow-on business with us. We have a broad level of industry knowledge. We are a platinum business partner. There are only 21 platinum business partners with IBM in this space, in the analytics space in the United States, and we're one of 21. We are also partners with Pitney Bowes for location intelligence and data. As far as our consultants go, all of our consultants are certified for the IBM products. Most of our consultants have an average of 10 plus years of experience, both on the business side and consulting and the technical side. Our areas of expertise span from data warehousing to predictive to business intelligence to financial performance management and now cognitive computing. And as I did mention, we are Pitney Bowes partner as well. A little bit about some of our offerings. Basically, we can help you on any point of your analytics journey that you're going through, from roadmap development to developing a strategy for your analytics journey, to data warehousing and big data, so getting all that data together in one solution that it can be consumed by multiple systems, to business intelligence, up to financial performance management, and then advanced and cognitive analytics, which includes predictive modeling as well. So within each of these areas, we can provide training, implementation services, health checks, migrations, basically anything to any type of work that you need, we can do. We can also do staffing too. So if you need a short or long-term staffing solution, we can provide consultants to fill those roles within your organization. So on to Analytics University. Analytics University was held in Miami the first week in October. There were approximately 1,000 people there. It is a great opportunity to get some free education on the software, specifically around the analytics suite. So the products that were covered were Planning Analytics, Cognos Analytics, Watson, SPSS, and the other analytics tools kind of surrounding that. Most of the sessions were either workshops where it was hands-on with the products, with the latest versions. There were customer presentations, covering use cases. A lot of the presentations, were cutting-edge uses of the products. And then there were a lot of sessions on new features that were coming out or had already been released. And that's what we're going to be covering today, is the new features around planning analytics. But again, it was just a great opportunity for IBM customers to get together and collaborate on solutions and use cases, as well as to network with each other. A little bit about the install base of planning analytics currently. The top section is the cloud environment, and the bottom section is the on-premise. So right now, worldwide, there are 550 customers that are utilizing Planning Analytics Cloud. That translates to 60,000 users across the world. And there are 225 customers that have bridged to cloud. And that basically just means that they were originally an on-premise customer. They are now either utilizing the cloud fully, or they're utilizing the cloud for at least part of their day-to-day interaction with planning analytics. On the bottom is the on-premise remaining install base. So there still are 7,000 local customers worldwide, but 67% of those have already migrated to Planning Analytics Local. And we'll talk more later about moving from the TM110 series to Planning Analytics Local. But basically TM110.2.2 is going out of support the end of September 2019. So IBM is trying to get everybody to move to Planning Analytics Local, at least, to get on a supported version. Next, we're going to talk about the IBM community pages. So they've created a collaboration site that allows users of any of the IBM products the opportunity to share thoughts, tips, tricks, and documentation about their experience. There's also a reporting resource module that you can go on and get materials to supplement your training internally. There are blogs, forums. You can also sign up for events around the country. So to sign up for this, you just go to ibm.com/community, and you can pick which communities you want to be a part of. And it's a good collaboration area for both developers and users to get together in one place and talk about the product and your experience. So moving over to the product updates, we're going to start with Planning Analytics Workspace. You'll hear me say PAW several times through this presentation. PAW is just Planning Analytics Workspace. It's just the short name for it. Everything that I'm going to be showing you today is included through in release 35. Some of the objects were released in previous versions of that, but if you download and install 35, you will get everything that we're talking about today. So the overarching message during Analytics University was that the developers have been primarily using this quarter to focus on replacing the legacy modeling tools, Architect, Perspectives, Performance Modeler. Those tools will eventually go away, and they will be replaced with Planning Analytics Workspace. Planning Analytics Workspace will become the centralized end-user experience for planning analytics. So all modeling, all reporting, and any user interaction at any level will eventually be done through Workspace, including administration. And just to go back on the Architect Perspectives Performance Modeler, there's not been a date released yet on when those will go away. We've been told that they will stay around for several years, but they're trying to make it to where users can go ahead and migrate to Workspace and do all of their modeling in that Workspace tool without having to go to the legacy products. So one of the big things that they've done in the latest release is a performance boost of the Workspace engine. So, and how they've done that is they've added some toggles on the setup of Workspace. They've gotten this big performance boost through what's called a deferred refresh. You can turn this on or off. Basically, if you're using Workspace for data entry, rather than doing, it's almost like an automatic recalculation. When a user keys in data, it's going to replicate through that entire view that we're looking at on that Workspace page and update all of the consolidations, everything at once. With this deferred refresh, basically the user keys in something, it will highlight what it's going to change, but it actually won't replicate and push that change all the way through until a refresh is done. That makes the data entry a lot easier and quicker for the end user. If they're filling in maybe 12 months worth of data, they can key in those 12 months and then click the refresh and it'll calculate everything at once. Then you go and make changes after that. Again, that's a toggle on or off that you can do just to make those workspace pages work a little faster. Next up is the column-based charting. So in the earlier versions of Planning Analytics Workspace, to create a chart or graph, you had to have one of your dimensions set as a measure behind the scenes. And Cognos Analytics also required the same thing. If you were going to do a chart or graph off of a cube view in Cognos Analytics, you had to have something set up as the measure. And it never really made a whole lot of sense on the Planning Analytics side to us. Because, measure is a measure, and, we didn't necessarily need to tag one dimension as a measure. They've changed it now to where the columns that you're using in your cube views is what is deemed as the measure of your chart or graph. Okay, so in this example, I put days as my columns. So when I change that over to a column chart, the days are what become the bars on the chart itself. If I have two columns, we'll plot those two. If I have two columns, two dimensions set as my columns with multiple elements in each, it will pick the first element out of each one of those dimensions to plot. So that's just something to be aware of. But it is a lot easier to do the charting and reporting now. You don't have to swap those out or move things around. Just change your cube view and change up your chart pretty quickly. The next item is rules tracing. So one of the big things that was missing in previous versions of Workspace was, I may be looking at either a cube view or a report, and I'm seeing a calculated value, and I had no idea where that was coming from. I had no idea how it was calculated, was it coming from another cube, etc. And the only way previously to find that out was to basically go back to one of the old tools and trace that in the cube viewer. That is now enabled within Workspace. You can actually just right-click on the intersection. So here you right-click on that 300605. There's a window that pops up and shows the rule that is being fired for that location. It tells you the result of that calculation, and it tells you what the precedents were that it was using to calculate. Next up is you now have the ability to import dimensions and attributes right in Workspace. So I can import things from a file. So if I had a CSV file that's got some dimensional data, I no longer have to go create a separate process to do that. This will create my process for me by simply dragging and dropping that file on top of the dimension. So here, for an example, I've created a new dimension manually. I right-clicked on dimensions, I picked those who created a dimension called Customers New, and this window popped up on the right-hand side. This gives me the ability to either manually enter new members, if I click the Enter New Members button, or I can drag and drop a CSV file right into this window. When I do so, I'm going to drag this CSV file right on top of my new dimension. It says the imported file. And then when it does come up, it gives you the window to be able to map each column in your CSV file to whether it's a parent, a child, or an attribute within the dimension. If you don't map column, it will ignore it. It will take different delimiters, just like within Turbo Integrator, but it basically will create your dimension and your attributes when you click import. So here we've clicked import, and on the right-hand side, it's created our new customer dimension and the alternate attributes. I'll show you in another example when we do a time dimension, the attributes that it actually creates and how to see those as well. You also have the ability now directly within Workspace to import cube data from the file. So here I've got a cube that I've created. Obviously, you can see that it has no data in it right now. The cube name is called days and period. It's basically just an intersection of a year and a month to give me the number of days in that period. I'm going to do some calculations off that. There are various different ways to do this. You could do it through an attribute or what have you. Just to create a simplified example, I created this cube with two dimensions. Literally, I can drag and drop my file. So here I dragged a CSV file, dropped it right on top of the cube in the left-hand navigation window. It brought up the file import wizard. And here I can go in and specify for each column whether it's a dimension, and it lists my dimensions that are already in the cube. So when I picked the first column, it said, is that the year or is that the period? So the year, the period, and then the third column, I picked the data point, clicked import, and you'll notice here it created the process. It tells me the number of records that it actually updated. I click OK, and now I can see my data right there on the screen. So very easy to create that process, and checking the errors, etc. I didn't have to go back to Turbo Integrator and create a separate process in Architecture Perspectives or Performance Modeler and then come back to Workspace and look at the results. I've literally drag dropped. Now what it is doing behind the scenes is creating a Turbo Integrator process, which you could then modify and or delete and or do whatever you needed to in any of the other tools. So it is there behind the scenes. The other import, you notice when we created that time dimension, there was another button there that said customizes time. So here we're going to demonstrate that. So we created a new time dimension called time_dim. This window pops up, and you'll notice we've got this button here that says Customizes Time. Within the Planning Performance Modeler product, they introduced the Time Wizard, which populates the time dimension automatically based upon a start and an end period. You set your level of granularity, and then it automatically creates that hierarchy for you, inserts all the elements, and creates attributes and aliases for you automatically. And it's a huge time savings. Huge time savings. If I'm going to use anything in Performance Modeler at all, it would have been that. And they've now incorporated that functionality directly within Workspace. So when you do click on this button, this window pops up. You can pick your start year, your end year, and then you can pick how far down you want to go. There is talks of going down to the day level. Right now in Workspace, Performance Modeler, you can go down to the day. Right now, this only goes down to the month, but that will be added down to the day. It will preview what it's going to create over here on the right-hand side. So it's going to create year roll-ups. So when you click on these, you can see the quarters and then the months underneath that. When I click import, it actually creates the dimension for me. So you notice here I'm in the time dimension itself, time dim, and I'm looking at the attributes that it's set up as well as the hierarchy. So when I expand out 2018, I can see the quarters, the months. It's automatically created all these attributes for me, and it's giving me placeholders for short name, long name. Now, what they found is that these short name, long names are a lot of times unique to a customer. So these are just their placeholders. You'll notice that the same as the element value. You can come in here and update these with whatever you need to, as long as they're unique for each line. So if you want to do it 01 2018 or 01/2018 or 2018-01, it's up to you, and you have that flexibility to do so. But these are just placeholders in here for right now. The notion of autocomplete is now built into Workspace as well. And autocomplete shows up in several different areas. And first, we're going to talk about rules. So this is really, the advanced rules editor existed in architect perspectives. And a lot of my customers loved that advanced rules editor because it basically error checked each line for you. It gave the color coding. You can insert a function. It would put in the arguments of that function. It would give you some more information when you were editing a rule, rather than just saying that the rule errored out. This is very similar to that advanced rules editor. So here we're creating a rule on a cube. It's a cube called KPI. And so I've right-clicked on the cube. I've added a rule, and I've already got 3 rule lines in that cube. But here I want to add a new calculation for the account total revenue per FTE. You'll notice I don't have any data there. It's not being calculated currently. It's not included in my rule file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and click the f of x function, and I'm going to pick a function from the list. When I do so, you'll notice it puts in the arguments for me, and it puts in the relations here, which I can drag and drop from my navigation window and put in the cube and the element values that I need. So it's a good time saver for people that aren't used to coding rules or don't know the order of dimensions of the cube, etc. The other thing it does is, as you're building this, it's telling you what the errors are, and it's also highlighting the row that's got an error on it. So if I hit save right now, obviously this wouldn't compile properly because these are not filled out yet. But it's telling you what it's missing, or if there's a syntax error or what have you, right then and there. So you don't have to go through the frustration of saving and waiting for it to error out. The one frustration, and it still exists with rules, that if you do save a rule and it's got an error in it, none of the rules in that rule file will be compiled. So if you've got users in the system that are interacting with that data, if you save that rule file, all those calculated values will be gone until that rule file is corrected and resaved and recompiled. So this gives you immediate feedback before you hit save that there's an issue. So it saves some of that frustration, especially if you're trying to update a rule during production times with users not sitting in the system, which of course is not best practice. But here we've saved the rules. We go back and recalculate, and you see that the values now show up. And of course, if I wanted to trace the rule calculation on this right here, I could use that rules tracer. Okay, some of the other functions that have been added or addressed are the ability to edit and create chores. So you'll notice if you've been using Workspace before, When you navigate down the tree, the lowest you can go is processes now. You don't see the chores that are set up on your server. You can't create a new chore. That is now enabled, but you have to be on the TM1 database version 11.3 or later. What that's equivalent to is basically Planning Analytics 2.0.5 local. And then, of course, if you're on the cloud, it should be enabled now. But if you've not upgraded to 2.0.5, you won't see that in the navigation tree until you do that update. But you do have the ability, once you're on the right version, to add a new chore, edit an existing chore, or delete an existing chore, just as if you were in architect's perspective. The other thing that's been added recently is the ability to create a Turbo Integrator processor through PAW using the ODBC data source. Before, you could drag and drop a file directly onto Cube, and it would create an ETL process, or you could change it to a Cube view. Now you can actually utilize an ODBC data source. The ODBC data source must be set up. If you're a cloud user, it has to be set up in the secure gateway. What the secure gateway does is it connects your network or your on-premise systems to the cloud. And the secure gateway is basically a virtual VPN between those two. It allows that connection to use that ODBC source within the cloud. If that's not set up and you're using cloud, you're not going to see that ODBC source available to you. So if you don't know how to set up that secure gateway connection, you have to get with your technical planning analytics person to get that set up and up and running on the back end. If you're using Planning Analytics Workspace Local, the ODBC connection has to be set up on the server that is running Planning Analytics, the Planning Analytics server itself. So just like with the Turbo Integrator, if the ODBC connection is not set up on the server, you will not see it as being selectable in the Turbo Integrator process. So regardless of whether you're using Planning Analytics Local or Cloud, it's got to be set up on the back end first. If you are going to use ODBC, the autocomplete is enabled here too. So here you can connect, click DB connection, type in your credentials, click next. There's a SQL query editor in here. You can now use Control Space to autocomplete a SQL keyword. So if you say select from, you do Control Space, and it'll bring up a pick list of your tables, your namespaces that you can pick from. If your cursor is preceded by a blank space, you can press Control Space to view a list of all the SQL keywords. So it's more click, drag, drop than previously in the regular Turbo Integrator process through either Perspectives or Architect, where you actually have to physically type that SQL statement or generate the SQL statement in some other tool and then copy and paste it into that query window. This is somewhat similar to Performance Modeler in that SQL Builder a little bit, where you can see a drop down of what's available to you and autocomplete directly in that window. Okay, so now we're going to move to PACS. So PACS, you'll hear me say PACS a bunch. PACS doesn't mean peace. It is Planning Analytics for Excel. And I get the question all the time, where does Cafe fit in? Well, Cafe is just the old name for PACS. PACS for Planning Analytics for Excel connects to both Planning Analytics and Cognos Analytics simultaneously, and it's just a rebranded cafe with new functionality in it. The intent is that PACS will eventually replace TM1 Perspectives. Okay, for cloud clients, PACS is the end user Excel interface that is available. Perspectives is only available in the cloud on a remote desktop connection that you have for your modelers. So your general end users cannot utilize Perspectives because of the way it connects to that server behind the scenes. PACS has to be used by users because PACS uses an internet connection, whereas Perspectives uses a direct connection with the server. About a year ago, as they were updating PACS, they got to about a 60% functionality level in PACS of what was in Perspectives. So you could do approximately 60% of everything in Perspectives you can do in PACS. Now we're at about 85 to 90% probably. And one of the big things that was missing that has been released now is the ability to do drill-throughs. The drill-through capability is key within Planning Analytics, and it has been in TM1. I have lots of customers that create these awesome reports that are aggregated, consolidated, etc., and they want to drill back to some detail behind numbers, typically on actuals. You want to see what actually posted or what actually makes up a number. Without that drill-through capability, you had no way of getting to that. And that's been released now. So here, we've got an example of a report on the left-hand side that we've created in PACS. This particular one, we can see the formulas, the DBRW formulas, just like we can in Perspectives. But you'll notice up here in the Planning Analytics for Excel ribbon, we've got the drill through button. It is lit up, indicating that there is a drill through associated with that intersection. So when I click on that drill through button, it will actually execute the query and it will pop up a new window based upon what intersection I clicked on. Okay. So this will work if that drill through is either Q view or it's a process. Doesn't matter. It will pop up in a new window, which you can then do whatever you want to with it. And you can see that detail right there on the screen without having to go off somewhere else and look at another query somewhere. The second thing that was missing until now is the ability to do two dynamic reports on one sheet. So a little bit of history here. For those of you that have used TM1 in the past, we're using Perspectives. Active forms and Perspectives are now called dynamic reports in PACS. That simply means that your rows will adjust to your report based upon the data that you query. You can drill up or drill down, okay, based upon what elements you picked for your row set. Now, previous versions of PACS would support multiple dynamic reports on one tab that have been created in other products, right? So you created one in Perspectives and you wanted to open that up in PACS. In most cases, those would open, right? But you couldn't create a new one. There was a limitation. It assumed that if you're creating a dynamic report, you only wanted one dynamic report section on the sheet. That's been fixed now, so you can come down here. We created one dynamic report for gross revenue and statistics. We want to create another one right underneath it where we're going to insert the default view, So we just come down, right click, and we can insert the second section, drag and drop it. It'll actually put it right down below. So you can traverse up and down both dynamic report row sets and get that all situated all in one sheet, and save it and modify it from there. Okay. Moving on to administration. So if we're going to set up new users on the cloud, okay, this process has been completely changed. It was somewhat of a pain originally for the cloud users. You'd have to invite a user. They would have to try to log in. It would create the Planning Analytics account, and then you'd have to go back in after they tried to log in the first time and give them a security role. Now you can actually give them that role when you sign them up. So the minute they log in that first time, they should be able to see data associated with their security role. Okay. And you can also select the role as analyst, administrator, consumer, or modeler. So if they're given modeler access, they should be given the admin security group and planning analytics side. But this is key because it's a big time saver for your administrator. They're not having to wait and see when a user logs in and the user calls and says, I can't see anything. They got to go back in and assign something else. This can be done all at the time of sign up now. For local, you now have the ability to activate or deactivate a user account. When you deactivate an account, any view, any subset that they've created will be saved. So before, if let's say we had a set of users that only use the modeling tool once a year, maybe for 4 weeks, they were only doing budgeting, and you've got a set number of users that can use the system, and you didn't want to necessarily buy licenses for everybody, so you would add some users to do budgeting. You'd have to delete some of the other users, and then you constantly have to swap out users. Basically, you have to delete their account, re-add them, etc. Now you can activate and deactivate. So if you deactivate a user, it will show up in the audit, when users are active or deactivated. It saves all of their views they've set up, all of their subsets, etc. Before, if you deleted a user, anything they had set up as far as their own analysis would be gone. So that's now saved when you deactivate a user. So before we get to question and answer, so if you guys do have questions, please type them in the chat window. We'll be sure we try to get to everybody's questions. Wanted to give you guys an offer. So if you're still wanting or needing to do a upgrade, or you want to do a migration to the cloud, there are a lot of customers out there that are concerned about moving from TM1 to Planning Analytics. They're like, oh my gosh, this is such a huge deal. It's an upgrade. Basically, it's just a rebranding of the TM1 name to Planning Analytics. There are some improvements, yes. There are some considerations that have to be made if you're going to move from perspectives to packs. But we are offering a complimentary 2-hour review of your model and your logistics and how you utilize Planning Analytics, and to try to figure out your best course of action as far as migrating or setting up cloud. I am a full supporter of customers going to the cloud. The cloud is a very sound platform, and it gets your planning analytics developers out of the administration role. They're not having to do upgrades. They're getting the benefits of new releases as they come out. They don't have to worry about backups or making sure the server's up and running or anything like that. IBM handles all of that, and all the functionality is the same between the cloud and on-premise. In fact, it's better because you get the releases faster in the cloud. But if you want to take advantage of us spending some time with you and going through your environment and giving you some suggestions on how to proceed, please email us at sales.lpa.com. You can also come to our website, www.lpa.com, and on our site we've got webinars, etc. that we've done. This webinar will also be posted out there shortly, and we have different training resources, etc. You can learn more about LPA or how we can help you. So now we do have some time for some questions. So if you can please type those questions in the chat window. We have a few that we've already gotten in. If I do not get time to cover your question, we will follow up with you within the next day or so. And I promise we'll get back to you soon. So I'll give you a second to type in those questions. Okay, first question. I've been hearing for a while now that IBM has been working on feederless rules. Is there any update on that? Very good question. I've been looking forward to that for a while as well. This was mentioned during Analytics University as one of the key items that they are still working on. As you can imagine, they're trying to make it compatible with the legacy versions, right? And figuring out a way that when you do an upgrade, you don't have to redo all of your rules or recompile everything automatically. And that's pretty daunting. From what I hear, they've made a lot of progress on that. And that it is likely to be complete early in 2019 in one of the major releases that they're going to do. Now, one thing, when that is released, there's going to be a lot of testing that needs to be done around it. We'll put out some type of communication. We'll probably do a webinar on it as well, on what you should do as far as testing your model with the feederless calculations. But it will totally revolutionize, I think, the way that you are going to model. It's going to make rule writing so much easier. We've had customers even, they've been using TM1 and now planning analytics for years and years. And feeders are still an issue, whereas if you write that feeder incorrectly, you can negatively impair your model. And we had a customer a few weeks ago that called and said they doubled their memory usage by creating one feeder, and it's very easy to do. And sometimes it just takes somebody else taking a look at it and figuring out what it is. But the idea of not having to use feeders at all is very appealing to us, and we're anxious to get that functionality as well. But it is coming in 2019 from what I've heard. Second question. The conference looks like it was a good opportunity to get some free education. Yes. Will the conference continue to be held each year? Awesome question. I don't really know the answer to that. This was the second year they've held Analytics University. Last year was obviously the first year. It was in New Orleans. It was a very small event, less than 300 people last year. It was put together pretty quickly last year, so there wasn't a whole lot of time to market the event. But there was such good feedback from the people that did go last year, they decided to do it again this year. The feedback that I've gotten from this year has been phenomenal. Everybody has said what a good networking opportunity it was. They liked the idea that it was a smaller event. It was more concentrated and focused on the products that they're using, Business Analytics, Cognos Analytics, and Watson, and some of the other tools. They weren't lost in the sea of people, and it wasn't diluted by the hardware and a lot of the other products that yes, you may have, but it was very focused in on the analytics journey, right? So from what I hear, IBM is planning on continuing Analytics University. Of course, the Think conference is still happening. That's in February 2019 in San Francisco. But Think is all inclusive, all IBM, a very large venue. But look for Analytics University next year about this time. Last year it was held in October as well. I believe they will continue to have it in the October time frame. They have not announced a location and or week yet. They will typically do that around the end of first quarter of 19. So once we do have that information, we will send out some type of communication that has been planned. And then, of course, we will offer discount passes as the event gets a little bit closer next year. But I do believe it will occur in 2019 again. Next question. I'm currently running TM1 10.2.2. Do I have to upgrade? Awesome question. TM1 10.2.2 is a very stable environment. I still have quite a few customers on it. They love it. There are no errors with it. Do I have to upgrade? I would say yes. And the reason is, if you do have an issue with it after September 2019, IBM will not be able to support the product under the normal support agreement. They will offer an extended support, which is a premium price for the legacy products. But Planning Analytics Local 2.0.5 is an awesome platform as well. With it, you get some great new functionality. The models run faster, less memory. You can now do hierarchies, which I've done a webinar on previously. You want to go to lpa.com and take a look at that. You can now use attributes as alternate hierarchies, which will reduce the size of your models. You can now use packs, which users are saying is a lot faster than perspectives. You have the ability to use PAW, Workspace. TM1 Web has been completely redesigned and revamped. It's a lot faster, a lot more compatible with Excel than it was before. So there are some good reasons to go ahead and move to Planning Analytics Local, regardless of the fact that TM1 10.2.2 is not going to be supported after September 2019. You still have some time, obviously, to do that upgrade. And the upgrade is not that difficult. It's just difficult to going from 10.1 to 10.2. Um, it is an incremental upgrade. You don't need to uninstall, reinstall. Everything will translate over. Now, if you want to start using uh, packs instead of perspectives, you can. There's some planning that you'd have to do and a lot of testing, especially if you're using like custom macros and such in in perspectives. Some of those need to be changed a little bit in packs. But I think your overall experience with packs from a user perspective will be better than in perspectives, just because sheets render a lot faster. At least that's what we're experiencing, what we're hearing from our customers. So, short of it, answer is yes, you should upgrade. There's a big push internally at IBM to get all of the legacy TM 10.2.2 and before customers to Planning Analytics Local. It's just much easier to support the environment. Next question. This is a good one. I hear that IBM plans to fully integrate Cognos Analytics and Planning Analytics into one front-end system. Is this true? Yes, it is true. We actually discussed it for quite a while at Planning Analytics University. In fact, all of the coding tools, code base, is being changed to the same base that Cognos Analytics uses. And that is to get it all on one platform eventually. You'll notice if you've used Cognos Analytics or if you've done a demo of Cognos Analytics, the look and feel of that front end looks just like PAW, right? And PAW is going to be the user interface for the web for planning analytics. And then packs can be used against both. So it makes sense to bring the backends together, right? They will still be somewhat segmented where you could turn off or on planning analytics and segregate them out a little bit, but will be under one umbrella. Going forward, it'll be a licensing thing, whether you want both pieces or you want to just use the Cognos Analytics part or Planning Analytics part. But yes, they are getting merged together, which will make integration a whole lot easier. Reporting off of Planning Analytics cubes and Cognos Analytics should be a whole lot easier to create those reports that will render properly and faster, etc. With that migration. So yes. Okay, that is probably the time that we have for all that we have left for questions. Again, if we do have any other questions that weren't addressed, we will follow up with you within the next day or so. I want to thank you for your time today. And again, if you've got any questions or if you want us to help you with your migration effort, please contact us at sales.lpa.com, or you can go to our website, www.lpa.com, and see if there are any resources that are out there or sign up for any webinars that are upcoming. Thank you again for your time and have a good day. Thank you.